Welcome to Bad Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg. Tony has our bad idea for us this week. Tony, what do we got?
Today we're going to be talking about Dashcon.
Dashcon. So the con is obviously a convention, like
Yes.
Comic Con. I don't know what what a convention about dashing would be.
It's actually a Tumblr convention. Like, it was specifically made by Tumblr users. They tried to make it called TumbleCon, but Tumblr's a billion-dollar company, and their lawyers were like, this is an unofficial con, you can't just use our name. So they named it after the social media dashboard that you get.
This might not be necessary, but there's a part of me that envisions like a 50-year-old grandma listening to this and wondering what this Tumblr thing that you're talking about is.
I actually included a description for that. The site is pretty simple. You post images or text, and your followers receive it. Kind of like Facebook. It's a little bit more like actual personal-oriented, less spammy. And basically, they can reblog it, they can like it, they can share it, they can do all sorts of other stuff, mostly an image forum.
I've heard it described as a blogging platform. If
Yes.
you know what a blog is, you're close. If you don't know what a blog is, we're beyond being able to help you at this point.
Imagine Twitter, but you could have, like, I think a 5,000 character limit or something. It might even be longer than that. So it's more akin to the old live journal type stuff. It's a blog platform, like you said.
Or imagine a blogging platform.
Yeah.
Like, Twitter is just a blog with the character limit.
Yeah, that's true, but that doesn't stop people from doing, like, 12-part tweets occasionally.
That's fair.
Along with being a blogging platform, Tumblr is basically this strange corner of the internet. It's a place for obscure pornography, the primordial ooze that founded the social justice warrior movement, and the final replacement for angsty live journals. It's also a generator of memes, an outlet for people who feel disenfranchised, and a place for all sorts of fandoms, and where a lot of different fandoms collide. And whenever I say fandoms, just talking about people that are fans of Star Wars or Marvel or My Little Pony or anything like that.
So it's very, like, the liberal equivalent of 4chan, in a way.
Yes, very much so. I don't know. I'm sure there are some conservative sects on there, but it's very much a hard left site.
Okay.
It's also huge. It has an estimated 30 million active users. They say up to 50 million, but this is a conservative estimate because they wanted to make sure that bot accounts weren't counted for that. They have something like almost 100 million accounts built and 30 million that are active.
Okay. So the big blogging platform, people on this want to make a con. What could possibly go wrong?
Yep. Well, one user decided that she really wanted to make a con for this. She thought all these different fandoms coming together would make an amazing idea. And this person's name was Lachlan O'Neill. She's posted about throwing a giant convention, and immediately the post went viral. So she decided that she was going to make a website for this and actually make it happen. There was a problem, though. She's 15 years old.
Also, she was affiliated with that guy that built the Fire Festival. No, that's
Yes.
a joke. I'm sorry. That didn't come off the way I wanted it to. I couldn't remember his name. I was like, I'm just going to say this thing. And, also, she was co-sponsored by... What's his face? It's not Kanye. He's the only rapper that I can think of.
Ja Rule was the rapper that was
Ja Rule.
involved with that. I can't remember the guy who's actually probably going to be arrested for the Fire Festival. I have a thing for failed festivals. I don't know why, but this will be the second or third one that we've put on Bad Ideas.
Yes.
It's wonderful for a 15-year-old to have wild ambition, but perhaps someone who's only attended 2 very small local anime cons shouldn't be in charge of setting up something this expansive.
Okay.
She started a blog for TumbleCon and immediately went viral. Thousands of users jumped all over the idea and started sharing it around. What was just a small idea began to become real. O'Neill then put together a crack team of other teenagers to handle different aspects of the convention. She imagined a giant con in which every fandom had their own booth. Fans of Doctor Who, My Little Pony, Marvel, and so on could meet with their friends, buy merch, get pins, and generally have a good time. They were also going to find their own panelists for these sorts of cons so that you could get some of the actors, some of the creators, some of the artists, all that together and just basically give like a Comic-Con type feel, but specified towards people who use Tumblr.
Okay. While there are some fandoms that might not necessarily need to be out in the light of day, this doesn't sound like a bad idea.
No, and this was more general stuff. I'm sure there were going to be some odd aspects of it, But like for the most part, it was an up and up thing. It wasn't like they were trying to make it like a bondage expo or something like that. Oh, and one of the main draws that they decided to put on their website was that there was going to be a ball pit.
I mean, what?
The ball pit's going to become an important thing for this later. We'll get there.
Okay, but see, I was on board with like Doctor Who panelists, like weird brony stuff, like the actors from My Little Pony. The fact that you're at like one of your draws as a organizer of this thing is ball pit.
Yeah. Well, Lachlan O'Neill saw a video in which they set up a ball pit in like a park in New York City, and people just came and socialized and became friends, and it was like kind of a viral video that went out. So she wanted to create that sort of vibe where people would just like climb in, chill, and talk to people.
That sounds fine, I guess. Okay. How big is this ball pit that we're talking about in the viral video?
The ball pit there it was a nice wooden pit, probably could fit about 8 to 10 people.
Okay.
So not too bad. At this point, there was enough attention around Dashcon that adults started taking it seriously. They brought experience, money, and ideas just as big as Lachlan had. She was immediately demoted, though. Her job and role on the website changed from being the leader of this to Lachlan does whatever Meg and Rox tell her to do.
Who are Meg and Rox?
Megan and Roxanne were people that decided to take over the con, as well as a guy named Kane Hopkins. They basically founded an LLC, brought in a bunch of money, and decided that they were going to turn this into a full-size legitimate con, not just a small-town thing. They targeted Chicago and found a pretty large hotel to set this thing up in.
When you paused there for a second, I was so cheering for you to say Kane Hodder.
Who's Kane Hodder? Oh, he played Jason. He
and
was
several other serial killers.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most appropriate fit.
That would have been funny,
amazing.
though. Yeah, that would have been great.
So these people are adults.
Yes, they actually, I think the oldest one was about 30, but they're still adults.
Okay. So now we're on good footing, right? We started off with a 15-year-old. Can't trust that 15-year-old. Now we have the actual people with sense who are steering the ship. Surely this is all going to go perfectly.
Yeah, and as far as teenagers go, they were able to run an Indiegogo that raised about $4,000 to get the ball rolling for this. So it's not like the teenagers were completely inept at it.
But it's a lot more balls for the ball pit.
Yeah, more balls for the ball pit. But at this point, the guest list started to grow. There was going to be a live reading from Welcome to Night Vale. Doug Jones, the actor who plays a bunch of creatures in various movies, was booked. And tons of musical acts, artists, and other people started to sign up.
So where's the bad idea here, Tony? This is sounding pretty much like a normal con. People come in. It's not... I mean, I've been to sort of a podunk local con that would have had things like... Doug Jones wasn't there, but, actors that you've heard of.
Yeah.
Not like the tiny con, but not like Comic-Con either. Just sort of a basic place where people go and hang out, and there's merch, and there's, cool panels. What's going on?
Where it started to go bad here was complete inept financial management. The people that were running this con were taking all the money from ticket sales and from other fundraising, and basically taking small vacations with it, booking hotels, doing things like that. So they were just spending a lot of money. As soon as the money was coming in, it was going immediately out.
Oh, no.
Other signs with that were that people were actually really, really rubbing against each other hard within the organization. Kane Hopkins was notorious for blowing up at people. He forced Roxanne, I could not find her last name. I think she prefers it that way from what I've read. To go from being one of the main partners in the company to signing a contract that forced her to become a secretary and basically like renounce all this ownership of the company and all these other things. There was just a lot of power playing going on for something as simple as a con in the background. But it got much, much worse from there. They signed a contract with the hotel saying that they would pay $20,000 up front and they would pay $20,000 from the first day's sales revenue. And they expected about 5,000 to 7,000 people to show up. And the first day, about 350 people did.
So they have money coming in from people pre-registering, right? Like they
Yeah.
should have known about how many people are going to be there based on people who have bought tickets. Why did they think there was going to be thousands and thousands of people when they'd only, one would assume, have sold like 300 tickets to this thing.
Well, they sold multiple days worth of tickets, so that wasn't as big of a thing. But they thought that it was just going to work itself out. It was a lot of wishful thinking on their part.
I mean, they clearly weren't working it out. I guess that the only thing that could have worked it out was the hand of Providence or something.
Yeah, a bunch of people descending on Chicago, and because so many people liked their post that they were just going to show up and actually fork over their money. When the doors opened at 9 a.m., people were treated to all the glory that was Dashcon. A giant open room with a kiddie pool filled with balls. A game room with one single PlayStation and some tables. No panels were planned till the afternoon, so people just meandered around for the first 4 hours.
So they were expecting thousands of people.
They were expecting 5,000 to 7,000, yes.
They're like sitting there like, oh boy, 5,000 to 7,000 people. Let's put a PlayStation in this room for them.
Yeah.
Like, they're so lucky that only 300 people showed up.
Yeah. And they had promised that they were going to have like an entire arcade space with like retro gaming and all this other stuff in that game room. And the only thing they were able to get was that single PlayStation.
It's so messed up. I could come up with more than one PlayStation. Like,
yeah.
Without spending any money. I could be like, well, I'll get my old, like, PlayStation 2 and put some Burnout on. I could call that classic. I could borrow PlayStation from my friends.
Call it retro.
Yeah.
Like, even if you had to spend $500, you could get some of those, like, SNES consoles. This was 2014, so they didn't have those. But, anyway.
You could get the original SNES for $500.
Yeah. What's really interesting here is that most of the people that were signed to do panelists, they never got contracts. It was just, like, written agreements through emails. So they were saying that these people were going to come. Like, a band named Steampunk Giraffe was supposed to be a big deal, and they were going to come to this con. And they were advertising it, and they even sold tickets to go see this at the con, so you were paying $65 at the door, then you were paying to see this band inside of it. But Steampunk Giraffe never once signed a contract and never agreed that they were going to be there.
This is so bizarre. This is so, like, how do you... I mean, I can get not, like, having a lawyer draw up a formal contract, but they never even said, like, yes, we will be there, and had, like, sort of informal, like, we will pay you this much money, and you will be there, and they're like, yes, we will, and when is our flight, and all this stuff. Like,
and
they didn't finalize anything?
Nope, and panelists were told that they would be paid in cash at the con. So they had to book their own hotels, they had to buy their own airfare, and they were told that they would be reimbursed as soon as they were at the con.
I can't imagine that any... Did Doug Jones actually show up to this thing with, like, we'll give you some cash when you get here? If you can. Hopefully you can get a flight or something over this way.
I'm pretty sure that Doug Jones did not show up.
Okay, good. Good. I would assume at this point that he has the nose to figure out that is not a good proposition.
However, the people from Nightville did show up, so there's a little bit more coming with that.
Oh boy. Okay.
The day went on, and most of the panelists didn't show up as promised. Crowds of people sat in independent circles, just conversing and trying to kill time, until some of the other events were happening. At 9 p.m., when they were supposed to be having a concert, everyone was told to gather in the main ballroom for an announcement.
This is still the first night, correct?
This is the first night. This is Friday night.
Okay.
So on Friday night at 9 p.m., they gathered everybody that was left in a room and announced that the hotel was going to shut down the convention unless they could come up with the second half of their bill, which was $20,000. They'd collected $3,000 at the door, so they needed the 350 to 500 people that were in this room to put up $17,000, or the con was going to be shut down.
Have you done the math on this? How much is it per person?
That's not a ton of extra per person. It's $34 per person, but not everybody that's there is going to pitch towards that, because a lot of people could see where this convention was going.
Yeah, you've already paid to get in. They haven't delivered on, like, anything, except for apparently Welcome to Night Vale. I guess we'll figure out what's going to happen with them later. But you're not going to pay $34 for the disappointment that you've already experienced.
Yeah, not to mention every person that's not paying that for that disappointment is making it so that the other people have to pay more. So they walked around with a paper sack asking for money, as well as collecting PayPal and credit cards, and within 1 hour, they actually raised that money.
They invented a church.
Yeah, they totally did. It kind of had a church vibe.
The
You had somebody up at the pulpit talking, and they were doing like different chants, and they were trying to lead the crowd. And like at one point, they got them all to do this like solidarity salute from Hunger Games, like the 3-fingered one. They were singing "We Will Rock You." Like it was just an absurd hour where people are just rallying. Apparently, they were even hitting up like the security people, and there were a lot of people maxing out their credit cards and just putting this forward. But within an hour, they were able to raise that money. One of the founders, Kane Hopkins, he walked up to somebody who was filming all this and was like, I just stopped a riot from happening with 5,000 people, and we were able to raise this money. And like the person filming was like, are there even 400 people here? And he's like, 5,000 people. It's just bizarre. It was absolutely bizarre to see this. Like, there is so much delusional stuff happening right here. And also, it really wasn't a riot, even though I might have started getting pissed off to that point if I'd been there.
Yeah, I think it was a real mistake to have this guy count the crowd numbers for the Donald Trump presidential inauguration, too. That's a separate bad idea, but
at least he landed a job after this.
That is true. I mean, I'm glad to see he's landed on his feet.
Shortly after this happened, it was very quickly changed on the website that no refunds would be given of any kind for any reason.
Of course not.
The con started back up, and a lot of the smaller panels were actually happening. The ones that were like, there was a lot of LGBTQA+, and they added actually, like, I think there was one of those panels with like 11 letters because they were trying to be very inclusive, because that's Tumblr. And they had a lot of those panelists run, and some of them got a little bit weird because there were people accusing one of the guests of being a straight white male trying to cash in on the popularity of LGBTQ stuff, even though he was a gay Mexican man, and he was very, very clearly a Mexican man.
I thought you were going to say very, very clearly gay. Maybe he's just having fun, Tony.
No, I can't speak to the gayness of this person. I didn't hear him speak or anything like that, and that doesn't really matter. But he was very clearly a Mexican man on this panel, and people were like sending him Twitter death threats and all this for no apparent reason, because that's Tumblr. And
I just love the acceptance of the wonderful inclusiveness.
Yes, the wonderful
of this
inclusiveness.
World of Tumblr.
But yes, as the day rolled on, at about 12 p.m. on Saturday, the vaunted main event, the reading from Welcome to Night Vale. And this is also peak Welcome to Night Vale. Like, this was when everybody was talking about the Glow Cloud. It was burning things up in the whole podcast circuit. It was it was just a good time for Night Vale. And an hour passed, and people started to get restless. They knew that they were there because the people from Night Vale did a signing the night before. And another hour passed, and someone walked on stage and was like, the people from Night Vale just walked, so let's just have a collective sigh. 1, 2, 3, and then she tried to lead a sigh, and all you could hear is, give me my money back!
Was that like one person, or did they like have a chorus arranged?
That was the clearest thing I heard. There was some obscenities, and there was a lot of murmuring and some other stuff, but that was the main voice of dissension that was actually clear. It was kind of sad because they were already there. The people in charge of Night Vale, they had done the signing the night before out of the kindness of their hearts. And like the thing is, you don't want to screw your fans over, but you also can't deal with convention people not paying you, especially when you canceled the second half of your European tour to be there. They flew from Europe to come to this event.
Man, I would say, like, there's so much poor decision making happening here, and those guys, like, if you are at the point as a podcast where you have a European tour, okay, it's not just a podcast, like a lot, like you're on tour on another continent from the one that you live in. Like, at that point, you really should know what this is supposed to look like, and have
you need to have
many alarm bells going off in your head about how this isn't going to happen.
They should have had an agent that got a lockdown contract, is what I kept thinking. Like, maybe they were going without an agent, but they probably have one. Like, there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of people that have made some great stuff. They put out a lot of books. They have, like you said, a European tour.
Right, like these are people who are in demand. If you don't have an agent at that point, if you're just like, I guess I'll answer my own emails in addition to handling this incredibly popular thing that I've created, you're kind of insane.
Yeah, so this was just something that I think they had agreed to whenever it was first coming out, and they knew that a lot of their success hindered on Tumblr absolutely eating up the podcast, so they wanted to give back to that community. But they should have gotten a little bit more ironclad. Like, they should have gone with something that was just solid and knew they were getting paid and got paid up front. That's how it should have been. That didn't happen, and they ended up paying for those airfare, paying for, like, the lost revenue of not having their European tour anymore, and just a lot of other stuff. They had to pay for the hotel themselves. They didn't get anything from Dashcon.
That's rough. I don't necessarily feel sorry for them because, again, I feel like you guys...
Yeah,
come on.
That was bad on their part, too. But Dashcon made it up to their people. If you had paid to go see the Night Vale panel, you were given an extra free hour in the ball pit. This little tiny kiddie pool filled with balls.
Were the other hours paid?
Apparently.
Were they charging entrance to the ball pit?
Imagine an 8-foot by 5-foot kiddie pool, like inflatable kiddie pool, not even filled with that many balls. Because that's what this was. And it inspired one of the best memes that hit Tumblr at the time. You should really go look up some of the videos for the ball pit meme. People got creative. They started calling this ScamCon, and people had a lot of fun with that particular meme.
I have to pull back the curtain a little bit and reveal that I have feigned ignorance about some of this stuff that I was familiar with. And I am definitely familiar with the ball pit. It's pretty pathetic. I have seen it, and it's not great.
What I did like about this is that Lachlan O'Neill put out a video, about 25-minute video, where she explained her role in Dashcon, and basically was like, Dashcon is my fault. And she owned up to all the mistakes that were happening here, and she also started talking about how much she loved the ball pit meme and all this other stuff. So she actually had a healthy way of kind of dealing with it, whereas a lot of the other people that organized this convention kind of just blamed everybody else.
Well, I respect the heck out of that. Like, that's just... people need to take more responsibility for their own actions. And I'm not just saying that about other people. I try to be that guy who's like, man, I screwed up.
Yeah.
When I screw up. But I don't think it actually is her fault. She gets this ball rolling. All right. She gets excitement going on this. And from what I can tell, it's not like her that screws this up.
No, it was taken from her halfway through the planning.
Right, the fact that she was the instigator of this, I can understand why she would feel bad that it went poorly, but this was not her doing. She, at the very least, just didn't stop these people from being terrible, but I don't think she can say well, it's my fault that all of y'all lost money. Maybe if she, the 15-year-old who I was making fun of at the beginning of this, had just kept it in her wheelhouse and said, no, it's me, and maybe, my mom and dad will help me a little bit or something with some of the stuff that I don't fully have a handle on, it might have been actually good.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of talk that the first one was supposed to be, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. And it was more like a little trade show, and people would get together and meet and do all this other stuff. It wasn't the giant lofty thing where you're paying $40,000 for the weekend. Because if you start small and have a really successful convention, then you can expand into a bigger one the next year. There's a chance that if this hadn't been taken from her, that it might have actually been a successful thing, and we'd be looking at Dashcon as something special. But it just completely went off the rails. And at this point, things even started getting worse because almost every single vendor and artist packed up because everybody had spent their money keeping this thing alive. So no one was buying shirts, nobody was buying merch, nobody was buying art. So they just left. So basically you just have all this giant open space and nothing to do with it.
That's rough.
At this point, the event promoters started trying to give out free prizes. What were these prizes? Hotel mints. They also didn't feed their volunteers, and it was just absolutely bizarre, what they were
Why
getting into.
not give up at this point? If you have resorted to, we're giving out mints that you could get for free on your pillow at the hotel. Well, plus the cost of staying in the hotel room.
Yeah.
But if that's where you're at, just throw in the towel and say, geez, guys, we messed up real bad. There's not going to be any more Dashcon.
Yeah, and at this point, like the con itself, the ball pit deflated, and someone pissed in it.
Oh man, I didn't even want to. I thought I was as weird as I was gonna get with this, but I just imagined like the process of peeing in a ball pit. And
well, apparently someone didn't actually go pee in it, just like walking up to it. Some 4chan members heard what was happening, went to the con, filled a water bottle with urine, and just dumped it in there, like while they were sitting.
So I wasn't trying to foreshadow at the beginning with my mention of 4chan, but that is so 4chan.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the videos came from. Once they started hearing how bad things were going, like a lot of the YouTube clips from Dashcon are from 4chaners. The next day, they soldiered on. But the first thing that happened was that a charity that was supposedly partnered with Dashcon, Random Acts, revealed that they were not affiliated at all with them, and all the donations that were given to that charity were being pocketed by the coordinators.
This is beyond incompetence at this point.
This is getting to fraud levels.
I'm like starting to reassess my feelings about these guys, that they're just dumb, and start thinking these guys like saw the potential here and just said, but what if we cashed in?
Yeah, and there's some weird math that happens with this one. Like I'll get into that in a second, but let's finish what happened at the con.
Okay.
At this point, only one panel is left. It's the official apology panel from the organizers. After a fair amount of blame shifting, the con shut.
At the beginning, me coming in looking like, why is there an apology panel?
That would actually be awesome if it was like printed on there. It's like you get the program and it's just like apology panel, and you figure it's going to be like one of those weird things where people apologize for like white privilege. But no, it's apologizing for like stealing your money.
I'm sorry I derailed with that. Continue.
But if you look at the actual bank statements for the things that happened, they claimed that they were able to raise that $17,000 mostly using money that was given through digital means, but they actually paid the hotel in about $11,000 in cash and claimed that they gathered much, much more through online donations. And there's some people, including an internet historian, who thinks that upwards of $10,000 might have left in the pockets of the coordinators of this event, not to mention all the money that they spent on the lead up to this. And they also bought themselves the most expensive suites in the hotel. They were providing themselves with lavish dinners and everything else when their volunteers weren't even able to eat. So they definitely cashed in on this better than most anybody else at this entire convention. It's just hard to tell how much of that was malicious and how much of it was incompetence.
It's gross either way. I mean,
yeah.
I know that's like a weird word to use, but that is what is in my head. It's just like gross.
Yep.
That you guys took advantage of anybody like this.
Yeah, it doesn't, like, I know Tumblr people get a bad reputation, but they don't deserve to have their money taken from them and given crap like this.
If I was planning a con, I would just be like hyperventilating that anything like half as bad as this would happen. Like if somebody canceled, I'd be like, oh man, like this is a disaster, this is terrible. Like the fact these guys just plowed on through with as much awfulness as they did, I just, whether or not it was on purpose, I have the same lack of respect and disdain for them.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they should have just called it Saturday night. Like they shouldn't have had people coming. I couldn't get numbers on the final day, but I would be betting that there's like less than 200 people left at this thing. It's kind of like Fire Festival, and I wish I could have attended just to see how bad it got.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's just so bad.
If there were time travelers, see, this is a good proof against time travel, because if there were time travelers, they would definitely be going back to these things.
Yeah. All of a sudden the attendance would be like 2,000 people, 3,000 people, and all of a sudden it turns into a successful con, and he like rewrites history.
Yep. That's why they can't do it, because of the paradox.
Yep. Anyway, thank you all for listening today. I think that's all we have to say about Dashcon.
It certainly was a bad idea. Well, not in its conception. Like
that's a lot of this, though. Execution ends up being the bad part more than the idea a lot of times with this show.
Yes, very much. And Execution needs to happen to somebody in this. No, that's a little bit harsh, Tony. But I have no sympathy for the. Does anything? Okay. Now that I've just thought about this, are there any consequences beyond just, well, it was a terrible con? Does anybody sue these people?
Nope.
Or come after them?
There were no class action lawsuits. The only person that would have been worthwhile as far as collecting would have been for the hotel, but the hotel got its money. I feel like everyone else, maybe Night Vale, I don't know what their fee would be, but I can't imagine that it's cheap. Like, for bringing 7 people on the road, putting them in hotels, and their speaking fee, like, they didn't end up suing, though. They just called it a wash and left. I don't think anybody got charged with anything. I've heard some interesting rumors about Kane Hopkins and a possible criminal history after this event, but I didn't want to bring up anything. I don't want to do anything
libelous. That's not
libelous.
Related to Dashcon. It's just sort of, this guy sucks.
Yeah, definitely. So that's pretty much it. Nobody was charged with anything. They kind of got off scot-free. It's just now they're infamous, and they took a lot of heat in the press.
No Dashcon 2, huh?
That was the last thing they talked about at that apology panel. They're like, and next year we're going to do so much better.
Well, we're still waiting for that one.
Yeah, same with Fire Festival.
We will not make you wait that long. Next week we'll have another one of these. I will be telling my story about the first mooning in history and how it killed 10,000 people. So I hope you'll tune in for that. Subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are on. Don't forget to check us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/humanechoes. And if you have bad ideas that you would like us to cover, send them to badideashow@gmail.com or to our Twitter @humanechoes.
You guys have a good one.
Bye.